Tropical storm Idalia is expected to head out into the Atlantic tonight after leaving a trail of severe flooding and destruction across the southeastern states of the U.S., with Florida hardest hit. Nearly 500,000 people in Florida and Georgia are without electricity, and families are trying to salvage what's left of their homes after Idalia barreled in as a Category 3 hurricane. There are no confirmed fatalities from the storm. However, Florida Highway Patrol has reported the deaths of 2 drivers in crashes caused by appalling road conditions. Arise News Chief Correspondent John Cookson has the story.
Holy that car's flying!
Cars tossed around like toys, catfish swimming on pavements. This was nature's wrath at its worst, with Idalia even spawning tornadoes. In Florida, the so-called Sunshine State, the storm surge out at sea flooded thousands of square kilometers of residential areas.
The water's going down. They're saying that the high tide's going to come back up, but I don't see it getting any worse. So I'm here back at my home trying to make the best out of a worse situation.
Electricity outages from falling trees, utility poles and power lines were widespread, as were wind-damaged and flooded buildings in hard-hit communities. As predicted, the brunt of the storm was born in the heart of Florida's largely rural Big Bend region, where the state's northern Gulf Coast panhandle curved into the western side of the Florida peninsula.
To be honest with you, I woke up this morning just in complete shock. I never seen anything like this. As I rode through town trying to get to my house, you see trees uprooted, power lines, laying in the road, and it's just it's pretty devastating. It took a toll on this town.
Idalia is the strongest storm to hit Florida in a century, and the cost so far is put at least $8 billion.
We are seeing an increase in the number of severe weather events. And what we saw with this storm, as we have seen with several of our hurricanes over the last few years, is that they are intensifying more rapidly due to the elevated heat of the water temperature in the Gulf or in the Pacific, or whether it's in the Atlantic. These storms are intensifying so fast that our local emergency management officials have less time to warn and evacuate and get people to safety.
Idalia was expected to drift along the South Carolina coast through much of today before curling eastward off North Carolina and out into the Atlantic tonight. John Cookson, Arise News.
Well, Arise Chief Correspondent John Cookson joins us live from London for more. Welcome to the show, John. It's a pleasure to have you. But let's talk about this story you've been monitoring. What's the latest? What are you hearing?
Hi guys, great to be part of Newsday as always. Well, this tropical storm continues to batter parts of southeast of the United States, the Carolinas bearing the brunt of it at this hour. Strong winds, heavy rain, a sea surge, up to 8 inches of rain, and that combined with the sea surge means there's going to be some heavy flooding in both North and South Carolina today. So things are far from over. It has been downgraded to a tropical storm, but as you can see from those images there, the strength and the power of this beast is still lashing parts of the states down there in the southeast. So they're battening down the hatches, of course. Many people leaving their homes and returning at this hour to try to find out what's left. But it's really a scene of devastation there for the poor folks of that part of the world.
Well, John, can you tell us what the current impact is on ground as families return to their homes?
Well, as you can see from those images, I mean, homes have been totally destroyed, caravans swept away, cars tossed in the air like toys, as I said in my report. Unbelievably, officially, there are no deaths yet from this hurricane stroke storm, despite the intensity that we've seen. But the power outages are having a major effect. 143,000 people without electricity in Florida at the moment, 118,000 in Georgia, 50,000 in the Carolinas without electricity. And of course, without electricity, you can't watch TV or perhaps listen to the radio, or certainly use your phone if it's run out. The main problem at the moment is to get the electricity supplies back on. But we're in hurricane season. The Americans are very used to this. Certain procedures immediately click into place, and they'll get to grips with it, I'm sure.
So, John, is this yet another example of global warming? I mean, there's been talks about this being an increase in ocean temperatures, and that's what has brought about this Hurricane Idalia. Do you agree with this?
It's possible, yes, but I would say that in 1896, more than 100 years ago now, an even stronger storm barreled into Florida, and then last year there was Hurricane Ian, which, how soon we forget, killed 149 people in the southeast of the United States. So this is an event that happens at this time of year. That said, you're absolutely right. NASA said back in July that this was the Earth's as hot now as it's ever been, ever. And hurricanes are created by heat. It's the heat in the sea, which has to be at around 26 degrees centigrade to about 50 meters of depth into the ocean, which that happens very often in the Caribbean, in the Atlantic Ocean. And that heat then rises into the sky, and as it rises, it eventually hits a high level where it cools, and it's this cooling effect that makes clouds gather, and they start to swirl and swirl and swirl and swirl, and creating an eye. And this is the source of hurricanes, which have been known since the beginning of time. But it is connected, scientists say, to global warming because the sea is hotter now than perhaps it's ever been or has ever been recorded.
Indeed, I've definitely seen reports of that, John. But where's Hurricane Idalia headed to next?
It's over the Carolinas at the moment, and then we'll swing out into the Atlantic Ocean. It's got Bermuda in its sights at the moment, so they're battening down the hatches, and it will reach that island in the Atlantic around about the weekend, possibly tomorrow, late Friday. And then after that, what tends to happen after these big hurricanes in America, they eventually end up strong winds and rain in Europe, including the UK, about a week later. So we can expect some tail end of this monster, this beast from the east.
Thank you so much, John. We'll continue to monitor this story. Thank you for being here on Newsday.